I've just been to the ultimate family reunion, an incredible journey through time that began with my mum and dad in Taree, New South Wales, and ended with my long-lost relatives in the heart of Africa. Like many Australians, I caught the Ancestry bug and decided to research my family tree. But as usually happens, I soon hit a dead end. After a few generations, all the written records simply dried up. Then science came to the rescue. Turns out we all carry our family history with us, a secret code hidden in our DNA. And that code eventually took me back 2,000 generations, more than 60,000 years, to where we all began. Africa, a landscape of staggering beauty and home to some of the most fantastic animals on the planet. And it's here that so many of our childhood dreams and stories began. But the greatest story here is man. You may not know this, but we all share a common ancestor, a man who lived here on the savannas 60 to 70,000 years ago. I'm directly related to the descendants he left behind, and so are you. The proof is in our blood, a secret code hidden in our DNA, a map that shows each of us the journey of our ancestors out of Africa.
It's almost magical. Think about it. I mean, you can rub something on the inside of your cheek and send it off to a laboratory, and there some sort of alchemy goes on, and we can tell you things about your past that perhaps you never knew or never suspected. So it is amazing.
It's the secret we all carry.
Yeah, it's inside of nearly every cell in our body.
Scientist Spencer Wells is a DNA detective, and I've entrusted some of mine for his forensic examination. Spencer's going to tell me the story of my family, a story that, as it turns out, I barely know beyond the first chapter. I grew up on this dairy farm in northern New South Wales. My family name was Ryan. We've lived here for more than 100 years, and it's here my extraordinary journey begins. This is your dad?
William Oscar, that's right.
He's the quintessential Irishman, isn't he? He looks absolutely Irish to the core. My parents, Brian and Pat Ryan, don't know much about our ancestors, apart from photographs and memories of immediate family members. This is the whole family.
Yep. My grandmother, my mother, eldest brother, Jack.
Who's that's you, is it?
Have to be me, being the youngest.
This is quite a family tree, Dad.
Yes.
Where the hell are we going to find any of these people? I mean, it's really difficult to know who's who, to be honest. If we trace the scant paper trail, it seems both Mum and Dad hail from Tipperary in Ireland. By and large, we are Irish stock. That's what you're telling me.
Very much.
Yes.
No doubt about that?
Well, I mean, like, I don't want to...
Don't want to frighten me.
I don't want to face the firing squad for making a mistake, but...
Mum needn't worry. Seems nearly every Ryan in the world comes from Tipperary, and our mob from a tiny village called Cullen. This is dairy farming country, no surprise there, and there are still plenty of Ryans here.
Oh, that's your tart now.
Oh my God.
And don't you have more? And with the brown
Christopher Ryan and his wife Joan welcome me into their home as if I'm a long-lost cousin.
No matter where you walk around this town, this place,
it's easier, yeah.
You'll find Ryans.
You will. You won't go very far across the field of another Ryan. You won't go far over the road into another Ryan, haven't you? Any direction you go.
Not much has changed on these farms in 150 years. What do you use it for?
Held the cow.
Sorry?
Held them.
Oh, for herding. Okay.
And I get a sense of what life might have been like for the original Ryan. He packed up and left for Australia. I know from written records that my great-great-great-grandfather, William Ryan, was born and baptised here in Cullen, Tipperary in 1816, and that when the opportunity arose, William, a groom and coachman, set sail for Australia when he was 25. But of his mum and dad, Nora and William, I know so very little. Like so many others tracing their family tree, I've discovered that there simply aren't any more written records. William and Nora are probably buried here, but these graves are so worn and weathered, even that which is written in stone has been lost forever.
Trying to build a family tree. I mean, you trace back through the generations, and everybody hits what they call a brick wall eventually. And, you know, for some people that happens within a generation or two, and for some it happens 1,000 years ago or more. But eventually everybody hits that point where there is no written record. And so how do you get beyond that? Well, you're carrying that story in your DNA.
Spencer Wells is a geneticist who set up the Geographic Project, a 5-year mission to map mankind's family tree.
I've got some really exciting news.
Oh, good.
Let's
Okay.
take a look at it. I'll show
Yeah.
you. If you look at this particular position, see that change from C to T?
T, yes.
That's the marker.
Our DNA is made up of a string of letters, but every now and then, nature produces a glitch, a marker that gets passed on to our children. By following these signposts through the remaining populations of ancient ethnic groups, Spencer Wells can work out how the human family spread across the world. Basically, you're trying to find Adam.
And Eve. Yeah, I mean,
Well, we
the
kinda know
ancestors
who
of all
Eve
of
is,
us.
don't
Yeah,
we?
the ancestors of all of us.
And so begins the next story in my journey, as I use my own DNA to travel to a time and place I'd never have imagined.
Before you were in Ireland, you were probably among some of the first people to make it into Europe out of probably Central Asia or the Middle East.
Let's go back 500 generations. That's 15,000 years. My ancestors hadn't arrived in Ireland yet, but the DNA in my blood tells of an extraordinary journey. My ancestors came from Central Asia, following the herds of animals they'd learned to hunt. They lived in places like this, the rugged mountains of southwestern France. But who were they, and were they so very different to me? Well, to answer that, you have to go deep underground to find the messages they left behind. It's huge.
It's a big cave, but that...
In the Neo Caves in the Pyrenees, archaeologist Yannick Leguillot is leading me in the footsteps of my ancestors.
10,000 years ago, they've decided to walk for more than 800 meters in the dark of the cave with very little light, and to go to a very special shaped chamber. One over the other.
It's amazing to be here, isn't it? To see where, so many thousands of years ago, somebody stood and drew a painting.
The place is the same. In most of the caves, the place is the same. Time has stopped, and all those things give a lot of emotion, that's true.
Yeah. They're like postcards from the Paleolithic. These were people like us, able to use their imaginations and think and act creatively.
They were great artists. I'm sure they had pleasure drawing this eye, for example, this buffalo eye. And maybe from where you are, but sure from where I am, it seems practically the bison is looking at me.
So where did these early Europeans come from? My DNA journey takes me back in time to the vast hunting grounds of Central Asia, where my nomadic forebears roamed 35,000 years ago, following a grassland superhighway that stretched across the continent.
Basically following food. It's interesting to speculate that perhaps we have some kind of genetic predisposition to wanderlust, that we get bored easily and we want to check out what's over that next hill. But in all likelihood, it was simply following the game.
And before Europe, before Asia, well, that's where my journey ends and where it all began. The home of my ancestors and yours, Africa. Well, I was a black woman.
Yeah, you were. Now you have this connection, this direct genetic connection to the people living there.
I do indeed. And it's a fascinating thing to tell my immediate family that we're all sand bushmen at heart.
That's right.
Hello.
These are my very long-lost relatives from 2,000 generations past, the sand bushmen of the Kalahari Desert.
How are you?
Remarkably, DNA detectives like Spencer Wells can pinpoint with certainty that it's from this African homeland all modern man evolved. Only a few of these nomadic tribes survived, but little about them has changed.
And the seeds?
She said you must swallow it and it must come out when you go to the toilet so that it can grow again. It's very important to swallow it to help with nature. It's just saying the melon makes you nice and fat and you need to be fat before you start a long journey.
Thank you. Nilki Bowers is one of only a handful of white people who speak their remarkable click language. She grew up on a farm here in the Kalahari with Bushman kids, witnessing their incredible ability to live from the land, the way they have for tens of thousands of years.
Just their survival skills. It's amazing. You would walk in the bush, you'll see flowers and trees, but when you go with them and you concentrate on it, it's amazing that you can get water and food and medicine and everything from the bush that we don't see.
They really are self-sufficient.
Totally, yeah. A bushman can survive anywhere in the Kalahari.
If we are all from the sand bushmen, how come you don't look like one and nor do I?
Well, we have adapted to the climate as we've moved around. The best guess is that we had darker skin when we lived in Africa. It gets a lot of sunlight, and so we had to have a natural sunscreen.
It's a little hard to comprehend that these are my true beginnings, the origins of us all. It's extraordinary given that we're so different.
Well, I suppose we've been watered down, that's why.
We've been watered down? And for the sand bushmen, whose existence hasn't changed for centuries, it seems to make sense as well.
We're now being told that, even I, you, all of us are ultimately descendants of these people.
He didn't realize it, but to him it makes sense that there must have been a beginning for us to get this to be this many people.
While this has been a story about my family, it is in fact everyone's story. A truly epic journey out of Africa. And what's even more remarkable about this journey is not so much the differences it reveals between us, but what we all share.
What's clear is that if you look underneath the surface, we're all incredibly similar, 99.9% identical at the genetic level.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
It is. We're all effectively members of an extended African family.
Hello, I'm Sarah Abo. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.